All right, so welcome everyone. I'm glad you guys are joining me again for another conversation. I had such a great time talking with you all last time. So I just want to do another quick introduction just in case people are watching for the first time. So we have Mitchel Osborn here, who is a psychic, and he is into tarot, astrology. And I'm going to put all the links to their channels in the description area. So please go ahead and check them out if you want to know more. I was enjoying your video on astrology and tarot when you were going through the cards, talking about the different associations with the tarot. And one in particular was the chariot when you got to that one. I really like what you had to say about that. I gained a lot of knowledge from watching that because I love to connect astrology with tarot as well. I know a lot of people sometimes keep it separate, but I find that it really helps me to actually learn astrology by associating it with a card. But thank you for doing those, and all your other videos are amazing. You also do interviews.
And that's about as far as my astrology goes. I'm not an astrologer. I use it as it fits into the tarot. So I'll clarify that.
I'm sort of the same way. I do it that way as well. I don't like do I do look at my birth chart. I do look at certain things as far as like my birth chart or other people that I know that if I have their permission, if they're close to me, I'll look at theirs as well to help with, relationships and things like that. But yeah, I find that it can be very helpful in common, combined with the tarot, 100%. Yeah, totally. And then we have Aurora from Lavender Hazelwood here, and really enjoying all the stuff on your channel. Such an artistic way that you bring the information that you want to bring to your channel. I love that you do that, and yeah, like your own personal style to that with all the things that you talk about, from tarot to spells to different things that you make, like different types of herbs and things that you use, or different types of even foods or things that you make that you just include in your videos. That's really awesome. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for being a part of this conversation.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, always happy to have conversations.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun. I find that having that ability to discuss different things with people, it can be a rare thing. And I think for a lot of people that don't really communicate through social media, it can be very isolating when you really want to discuss some of the things that you want to discuss. And I really enjoy being able to talk to you all.
Yeah, I love, learning things from you guys and listening to the conversation, as well as partaking when I have something to contribute.
Oh, you always have something to contribute. So the question, I put several questions out there, and I did a poll, and the one that got the highest mark so far was inner guidance, connecting with your inner guidance, and what method has worked. That got the highest. And then after that, it was breaking free from social and cultural rules. So that was the next one. So we can focus on the inner guidance one, exhaust that as much as we can within the hour. I thought we'd chat for about an hour or so and see where we go from that. If we want to switch over to other topics, we can hit those as well. But with the inner guidance question, I had no idea. I didn't know which one would get the highest ranking there, but I was kind of surprised at that one. I thought it might be something different there, but that's a really interesting topic, one that I am exploring myself, and I'm interested in hearing you guys' thoughts on it. Just to kind of start it off, I think that when I was looking at that question, I was pondering, okay, well, inner guidance can mean different things for different people. So the way you approach it and the way that I think we can discuss it can come from certain lenses. But what I mean by that is some people might think of their inner guidance as on a very physical, biological level, as where I got a gut feeling about something, I have a hunch about something, and they may never leave that whole realm of exploration. And then you have the other side of it, where someone may feel like they're connecting with their multidimensional self. It's infinite, it's timeless, it is a higher self and something very personal to them. And they see the spiritual connection or the dimensional connection going through portals and things like that. So I think when we ask that question, I think it's good to clarify that where we're coming from could be from a different perspective than what someone even sees that as. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think clarifying it is the first thing. And I was writing down, words like subconscious. As a hypnotherapist, a lot of times our subconscious is driving us or can give us that inner guidance. I think the term higher self, I almost feel like higher self might be what you said, like the interdimensional self, or and then I think some people will consider their angels, guides, ancestors that they're connecting with on the other side of the veil as an inner guidance. Even though personally I wouldn't see it as inner guidance, but I don't know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you feel like some of those connections may not be internal. Some of them may still be considered an external connection.
Then you have to, and it's like, then we got to define what's internal, external. I mean, if we pull back to the kind of like quantum realm, then is there really internal, external? Is it, that's where it does get complicated in my mind, defining things, because this is something that I struggle with. It's like, I use a lot of like, as it feels, so what your truth is, what you feel, right? So yeah, because like I consider when I'm talking to quote unquote spirit, which is who I consider like my guides, I feel like that's inner guidance, but yet I feel like that's, outside of this physical body. But yet I do have the gut feeling oftentimes of what, I should do, what direction I should take, or should I slow down or speed up? And usually if I feel that, then I'll kind of tap in and say, why am I getting this feeling? Can I get some guidance from, angels, guides, ancestors? Spirit is what I usually kind of use as a reference to that, or somebody else that I kind of have a name or a vision or a definition of who they are.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, because what I've thought is like, I think based on the last conversation we had, you talk about like, there was a point when we were talking about getting messages from other races, like other dimensions, where it's either intuition or whatever, spirit, whatever you're getting the message from. Like how would you differentiate between it being your own intuition, your own psyche, a spirit, an alien? Like how does it, is that all the same realm, or is that are there ways to tell the difference between all of those different kinds of messages that you're getting?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the question I have.
And
yep.
and what it feels like to me is kind of, and I don't like the levels kind of concept, but if we're in like a 3-dimensional level right now, we're talking, we're using electronics to communicate to each other. But if we quote unquote take it up to a 4th or a 5th or a higher dimension or level of vibration or octave, then like we're probably all, because we're connected here, we're probably from some soul family, a group that's been around, or connected. So if I feel like I'm talking to, Metatron, if I take it up to its highest level, we're all part of source energy. So at that place, I don't feel like there is a separation, but yet I feel like as we, come down through dimensions to this place that's thick and heavy, then I think those things help our human brains comprehend what it is,
Right.
Yeah.
Is there, I mean, in your experience, is there a way to tell the difference between dimensions as you travel? I know some people say that they can anyway. I don't know. All I sort of know is if I'm in the inner, for myself anyway, the way I've described it is if I'm in the inner realm, meaning I'm getting intuitive messages, I'm meditating, and in that space, the trance-like space, that would be the 4th dimension. But other than that, I don't actually. Hi, Kate.
Kate's here.
Hi.
Hey there.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, thanks for joining. Good to have you. So this is Kate from Daily Tarot Girl. So we'll just go ahead and continue. You can go ahead and continue, Aurora.
Yeah, is beyond that, I wouldn't know, how to differentiate between dimensions, 4th, 5th, above. Is that something anyone here has any, I don't know, tips on or clues about?
I think that it becomes a little bit more nebulous as you start to, of course, increase up different dimensions or different levels of frequency. And I think it's just based on frequency. Higher frequencies are going to be, from what I've read, higher dimensions. And I think it gets to the point where the self diminishes the more you start to transcend those different realms. So you get closer to source, you lose the self, but then you don't lose the self in a sense. That's the part that I really struggle with understanding, is how to really incorporate that self into a source or a single point, but still have what remains of you. That part I can't wrap my head around. But I think that the more you start to connect with different realms, I think you can feel it in a sense of just not feeling so heavy and so dense in this vibration, and feeling like a part of you is lighter and more. I think you feel more of a bit of lightness when you are feeling a different realm, if that makes any sense. But I think it's a way you feel. It's an inner feeling for me, an inner feeling of once I get to a meditative state and I feel lighter, I feel like the weight of the world is sort of lifting. And then I can sort of feel that shift. But it can be subtle. It can be subtle, and a lot of people may not even realize it when it happens.
And for me, and I think it's got to be individual. I mean, like, you know, in the last probably year and a half, 2 years, this has just been something that has just come to me, like, you know, in my red chair back there and meditating. You know, I tend to not feel too much. I really blocked that out as a child because it about killed me, but I tend to see and hear more. So, and I like those. I don't mind feeling, but those are, so a lot of times, you know, I'm like, I feel like I feel a shift, and then I'll see something. And I'm like, oh, okay, so you're showing me an image, you know, do you have a name? Do you want me to call you? And then I listen. Sometimes, like one time, they literally sat down and they're showing me an IQ, what level might mean. Like humans are, you know, kind of like 120 to 150 IQ. And then like one, you know, guide comes in and they're like, I'm kind of at like the fourth or fifth dimension, and I'm like 250, 300. And I think, again, it wasn't that they're telling me they're smarter than me or have a better IQ, but it was like, here's a number, which I love numbers. So it gave me a kind of range on the octaves, you know, the piano scale, the scale of vibration. And I'll never forget, like, when, quote unquote, what I feel like was Metatron's energy, I literally, you know, when it connected the first time, like really connected, they were just sitting there like looking over a fence down at me is what it felt like. And I'm like, so what are we going to do today? And they're like, you're just going to adjust to my vibration. And we're kind of meeting in the middle. And it was literally just like, I just kind of sat there quiet and, you know, adjusted to, I don't know, maybe the download and understanding how they work. Just, hey, it's like a meet and greet at a coffee shop, you know. You swipe left and you meet them at the coffee shop and you have a conversation to get to know them. And then next time you see them, it doesn't feel quite as weird and awkward. But yeah, it's so weird, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that. I have some cards I want to show. This is from Beyond Muria. And the first card that was right on top, as you said, that it got my attention. And it looks like this, and it says unique gifts at the bottom. And I think we do have a unique way of connecting. And so it is individual, I think. I think that we have certain people that can feel, certain people that can hear. And so, you know, we talk about the clairs, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. And they are, I think we have them all, but I think we can hone into specific areas. So when we talk about the question of connecting with our inner guidance, it's going to be very specific. And I think that the key thing is to find what works for you. And I have some other cards here. This is from Divination of the Ancients. And one of the ones on top was handwriting. Some people will write. They do automatic writing to connect. I found that has worked for me in some cases. Pendulums. There are, you know, of course, there's tarot. But even something as simple as a candle might help someone focus and connect. And, you know, someone else might dismiss that and say it doesn't really work for them. But I think that because we're all unique expressions of that central source, or that whatever you want to call it, we are all still going to have unique ways of connecting. And those ways of connecting, I think I don't think there's one way that's better than another. I think they all have the highest potential as far as what you can do when you connect, if you feel, or you connect if you see. I think that it's just a matter of, just like a basketball team has different players that have different roles. Not one role is better than the other. It's just that it comes together all together, because like you were saying, we're all connected. It all comes together for one central purpose. And I think that it's to remember basically what we've forgotten when we come here, when we drop down into the physical realm, and we remember in different ways. We remember maybe feeling we can remember better, seeing we can remember better. But once you start that, it's a process. And the other card that I had here was Beyond the Mind. And I think that, there is a connection that we make, but I don't think it's really beyond the mind. I think it connects with the heart. And so I had this card here for heart. It says home. I think it's a heart-mind connection. But in order to explore that inner realm, there's two main things that I think, and number one is surrender. And I think that when you surrender and you sort of let go of a lot of the pressures of the world, of what you're supposed to think, what you're supposed to believe, how you're supposed to do certain things, even when it comes, from a religious perspective, or even from a scientific perspective, those things can bottle you down. And it will take a lot of vulnerability, pick that as well, because people are going to point the finger at you. You start pulling out crystals, tarot decks. It takes that amount of vulnerability. Some people like I know Mitchel is just like, I don't care, but for other people, like for myself, it took me some time to really accept and embrace that, hey, you know what? I'm dealing with something other than just the physical. I'm dealing with something that can be extraterrestrial, something that can be a multi-dimensional type of higher self, which maybe is something that is outside of me, but still a part of me, but it contains all of my past lives. It contains everything in a timeless form. And something like that is, I think, a very significant connection that we really, I think, were intended to have and lost at some point. From what I've read, I've read that, we are here to wake up to the fact that we have that connection. That's not something special or different that we should not have at all. It's something that we are entitled to have, that connection, that guidance from our higher self. And to be blind and without it has been a significant struggle for mankind. And I think that Earth right now, I feel, is a central focus for help and healing from the galactic community, from everyone trying to pitch in to increase the vibration, to send star seeds, to send people here, to increase that so that we're not stuck in this void of darkness. But that's my feel of it. I don't, whether that's actually the case or not, it's what I've been feeling from what I've read and what I've seen. But yeah.
What deck were you showing us there?
Oh, okay. So this is Beyond the Muria. This deck is actually a very good deck for working with connecting to your inner guidance. I highly recommend it because it gives you subtle things that you might be missing. Like this one says gracious receptivity. So being able to receive, because you have to be open to receive, I think, from other frequencies. They have these patterns. I think higher beings sort of have these patterns of non-interference and free will and not interfering so much with you. But when you're open and you are willing to have that, I think that you get more connection. And I could be wrong by that, but also like Mitchel was saying, how they were increasing his vibration, and then they'll heal you, so healing, you might get a card like that says healing or something like that. And it might help you remember that, hey, maybe there's some healing I need to do. That's something blocking the connection here. Because we can get stuck energy from our experience here that just sort of gets in the way. It's interference. It's like static. It's like you have a TV on and then the microwave turns on. You know, when microwaves did interfere, you have a microwave on and it just causes all this interference and corruption, and you're trying to connect and you're like, what's going on? And you have to figure out, okay, it's the microwave every time it comes on. Or, you know, you're taking a shower and then someone comes in and turns the water faucet on and the shower gets colder. And you're like, what's this interference? What's going on? And so certain things in our physiology, because we're energetic beings, I think allows a blockage of flow. It creates this blockage of flow. And I think sometimes they have to step in and you have to graciously receive that healing before that connection can be made. You need that help, I think, sometimes. And as much as I say, okay, we're sovereign beings and we shouldn't be relying on the help of outside forces, as much as I say that, when we talked about being connected, we're all connected. So the help that you get is still the help that you receive. I mean, the help that you give is still the help that you receive. So if you're receiving help and you think that that outside source is an outside source, it's not really an outside source, because it is still you. If we're all one and we're all connected, that is still you. And so you're not really cutting corners. You are helping yourself. And so when you look at it from a multidimensional framework, it's like, okay, well, you know what? I can take this help graciously. I'm not being a victim. I am accepting a part of me. And that goes for angelic things. And that also goes for the shadow self, incorporating the shadow back in, because the shadow is highly important, and bringing in parts of you that need to heal. Because when you look at the shadow self, it can become compartmentalized and forget that it's a part of you and become an entity all of its own. And so when we ignore that, it continues to cause a blockage as well. But
here's a perfect example of like my inner guidance. You just said when you're in the shower and someone turns the water on. So for about a year at this house that my husband and I live in, we literally had to make sure nobody flushed the toilet in the other place when someone was in the shower. And because of what we went through, it becomes a wonderful, because they literally showed me that image again when you said that. And what the problem was, because it slowly came on, there was a water purifier outside. And we never checked it. We didn't even know we had it. So the guy comes up and goes, "You got a water purifier? Have you changed the filter?" No, right? We haven't changed the filter. So rather than changing the filter, we said, let's just get rid of that. We don't need anything being filtered coming into our house. So inner guidance, you know, I feel like I've removed my filters and I just allow whatever needs to come in, and no one's going to flush the toilet somewhere, turn the water on and upset my flow that's coming in. So that perfect example is like one way that I can say is how my inner guidance works on a daily basis. You know, someone's asking me a question about their life and all of a sudden I get an image of that. I say, oh, you need to remove all your filters. You know, someone's messing with the frequency of the microwave. You know, someone's messing with your energy coming in.
Yeah. And then from having that experience that you have and having that example, I think it really helps people. It triggers something in people, and they realize, okay, there are some toxic energies here that are getting away, and I got to heal this, you know, and to move on. But also, Kate allowed me to listen to her hypnotherapy session. I'm not going to share any details, but one of the things I want to mention.
It's fine. You can say whatever you want.
Okay, so she let me listen to a part of it, and I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And I think that it speaks to the fact that help can be so important, because, you know, you go to a hypnotherapist and that's someone from, you know, an outside source, but they are helping you get into that state. And I think some people may need that initially, or may need some sort of guidance in that way. It might be very, very helpful. Even if you don't need it, I find that it's very helpful. And I'll put a link in the description to the website you gave me for the different hypnotherapists that people could reach out to. The one that you went to was in Vancouver, so it was kind of out of my range. But there's others, and I want to try to do that as well. But the thing that struck me the most about that session was the fact that it was. You said, oh, when you emailed me, you said, oh, it's kind of boring. It's not really, you know. I found that the boring, mundane parts made it so real to me, because I was thinking about my life. I was like, I go to work, I, you know, do certain things. And it was like you were going through the life, that past life, in such a way that made me immersed in the situation. And then it built up to significant events, because at the end she was like, well, go to something significant. So she took you from like random things to like something significant. And then it all came together and gave me this picture of, what that lifetime was like for you. And it gave me this understanding of not just what that lifetime was like for you, but the personality of that lifetime, of what you experienced, how it shaped you in that lifetime. And then I started thinking of how that relates to you now. And so we were discussing that as well, how, certain things like you don't really use cell phones and different things a lot. You kind of have this thing where you shy away a bit from technology.
Yeah, totally.
And because I remember talking to you initially, and you were talking about that, and I was like, wow, I think it was something you said, you didn't have a phone, or there was something you said, and I was like, wow, that's unique. And and then when I listened to that hypnotherapy session, I was like, wow, okay, maybe that's an experience that she had with that kind of connects to this present day, and it connects to the whole technology thing. And so it makes sense. But absolutely, when we get that question of, okay, well, how do we connect to our inner guidance? That's another, I think, significant option, is having someone help you get into that state of connecting. And finding those pieces of things that can be healed, because some things that need to be healed could be coming from a past lifetime. I think that could actually be the case.
And I just want to jump in here because I know we were talking over email about this, and I said, and when I re-listened to my hypnotherapy tape, it suddenly made sense to me, that whole theory that everything is happening right now in one moment. So all your past lives are actually happening at the same time. We just experience it in a linear way because that's just kind of how we're programmed. But in reality, or in another reality, everything is like happening at once. So we're living all these different lifetimes in different places all at the same time. So it's like you have one self, but then it's like fractured or splintered off into different beings, different experiences, and it's all happening at the same time. And that idea always never really made sense to me. I always thought, like, that's really hard to get my head around. Like I had a really hard time understanding that concept. But then when I was re-listening to my hypnotherapy tape, and I was noticing like themes between that past lifetime and this lifetime, it suddenly became apparent to me, like, oh my God, I think all these lifetimes are unfolding at the same time. And there's the same challenges are coming up in all the lifetimes. And each lifetime that I'm living is an opportunity to heal that thing or overcome that particular challenge. And I only have to do it in one of the lifetimes to have a ripple effect on all of the lifetimes. And I just think it's interesting that for me, like a concept like that, I couldn't really have grasped like 2 or 3 years ago. And for some reason, all of a sudden now in the last few months, like these weird concepts are suddenly making sense to me. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Like I could wrap my head around it now. It's strange. Has anyone else been having experiences like that where like certain things are just like making sense and kind of falling into place where before it wouldn't have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, recently, yeah, I feel like my whole life is doing something different. Like there's a way of being that I've been and I've come up against certain walls that have been like, I don't know how do I break through this? And all of a sudden it's like things are starting to open up and I'm breaking through, but it's, it's dealing with the shadow. It's dealing with all of the things that you deal with as a human in order to expand and, I don't know, grow, I guess.
Yeah. And for me, I was in the same position, as a group fitness manager for almost 18 years. And just on a whim, one day I was talking to someone who I was leading mindfulness sessions with, and she is like an employee health and well-being partner. I said, oh, let me know if a position ever opens up. And she's like, one is. Less than 6 days, I had my first interview. I'm on vacation 2 weeks later, getting offered the job. And my life has completely shifted. And even before that, I felt like I'm driving to, and I'm for 30 years, my life is around schedules. I teach a class at this time. I have a client at this time. Not just meetings throughout the day, but scheduled classes, clients, that's what I did. And all of a sudden it's like, I can't, there's no schedule. It's just like, I'm driving sometimes and I'm like, I don't even really know where I'm going or why I'm going there, but it's just like, and I'm okay with it. That's the part that's neat. It's like, I love to know what's next and what's coming, but now I'm just like, I don't even know what time I'm gonna wake up this morning, and that's okay. And that is just, it's like, okay, pivot, turn, dodge, flow. And that's just not been my life for so many years.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? And I've experienced similar. I think for me, like over the last 5 years, I'm looking back and I'm noticing areas of my life where maybe there were things falling in place, but I didn't recognize them at the time. And I didn't notice certain connections at the time. But now I'm starting to be able to identify when I'm really connecting to something. And it's something where I'm still surrendering to that and I'm still becoming very much open to that. But that's what I'm working on. I'm working on that, going back to that innocence of sort of childhood, because I think that we kind of lose that. And I know that children are they're very much, before we start putting all the information of how the world works into them, they have these experiences, like imaginary friends and make these different connections and different things like that. And I think there's something to that. I think it's something too when we have to like unlearn a lot of the things that we get. And I feel like I had to unlearn a lot of the expectations. And now that I'm unlearning it, when I look back, I see the transition from when I started, going into tarot using crystals. I'm looking back and I'm seeing different connections of, like, I'll watch a video or I'll watch something that I've made and I'm like, right before I made this video, all of that information was scrambled in my head. It wasn't cohesive. And when I started talking about it, I feel like something else jumped in. And, I don't think it was anything like I noticed or ever really noticed, but I'm starting to notice it a little bit. I did a video not too long ago. It might have been like 5 days ago, 6 days ago. I'm not sure what it was, but it was on time. And I went back and I watched it. It was a weird video, but I went back and I watched it and I recognized some things. So I was talking about these clocks. And so I looked at this clock and I was like, talking about the clock or whatever. But then when I went back and rewatched it, I realized that as I was talking about that clock, it had a specific time on it. And so I noticed the time. And then when I looked at the second clock, I started talking about waking up. I started talking about connecting with my multidimensional self. And I went back and watched it, and the clock was, I had set the clock, and I set the clock, intentionally set the clock, but I didn't realize that I had set the clock to 11:11. And I remembered I set it to that, and I was like, I just set it to that. And it was a part of, what I was intending to do to kind of, specifically set it, but I wasn't really consciously thinking about that, having that be a part of the message, at the time. And then I started talking about something else, and then the clock was wrong. And I said, well, this clock is wrong. And then as I started talking about that, what I was talking about was like distractions, being on the cell phone, being in the world and not really paying attention. And then I would switch back to the clock that was off. And then I started talking about the calendar, and the calendar had October 11th on it. And I was like, huh. And so when I went back and watched it, I got a lot out of it, more than I really intended to put into the video. When I watched it again, I thought, I was not intending to get so much out of this myself. And it seemed like something else was connected there. And I felt like, I don't know, I just feel like I need to own that a little bit more, because I don't own it. I don't own the fact that maybe there is a connection there. I don't own it. I'm struggling with the fact that it could be that, because of my conditioning that, oh, that's not, no way, no, come on, what are you talking about? That little thing that clicks on in the back of my mind of, nah, Will, you're not special. There's not, stop it. I get that in my head, and it bothers me because I feel like I want to shut off that connection, because it makes me, I sort of feel like it separates me or puts me into this category of, oh yeah, that's unique, when I should be embracing it. And so that's my struggle with my inner guidance and my connection, is embracing it, because I feel like I have to drop a lot of things to embrace it. And I am really frustrated with that. What do you guys recommend?
what do you find you have to drop in order to embrace your
I feel
inner
like
guardian?
I have to drop the expectations and opinions of what I've experienced in the scientific community, what I experienced as a teacher, what I experienced from relatives and friends, as far as what they deem acceptable when it comes to connecting with maybe it's extraterrestrial, maybe it's interdimensional, whatever it is that I feel like I am connecting with. There is a barrier there. There's a barrier there as far as what I think um, is realistic for that connection. Even though a part of me is like saying one thing, like when I have these conversations with you, a part of me is saying, yes, this is the connection. This is how you have to do it. I know it, but accepting it is still an internal struggle. It's like a split, an internal thing
I
within me.
think what's helped me with it is to see it as more mundane, because I think that we're looking at it as this like kind of exotic thing, like connecting with your higher self or connecting to these other dimensions and having these kinds of experiences. I think we're seeing it as this really unusual thing that's like really exotic and unfamiliar. And I think that the more we see it as this like mundane kind of thing, even though it's not mundane, but like the more we see it as this like regular part of who we are, and kind of seeing like connecting to higher guidance and connecting to those other dimensional realms as being as regular as like brushing your teeth and eating and stuff like that, I think
Mhm.
that we'll start to feel more comfortable with it. Because I
Yeah.
think what I hear you saying, Will, is like people around you think it's kind of weird. And you
Mhm.
also, a part of you also thinks it's kind of weird too.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it is weird. Like it is weird because it's not like, none of us, I don't think, have been brought up to think that it's normal. Um, I don't think any of us have been really encouraged by our, social circles or, friends, family, work, or whatever, to like embrace this kind of stuff. So I think that um, it is new. I think more people are opening up to it though. And I feel like this is, I feel like in like 10-15 years, this will be considered more normal. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start these conversations with you all, because I feel like the more we discuss it, the more we make it normal, the more it will, be something that will allow people to drop that baggage. I actually, since we've had discussions and since I've been putting myself out there like this a bit, I've been able to make some progress, and I feel like it's helped me to heal in a sense. So yeah, I think that coming together in a group is an important part of it. Doing it alone really sucks, but being able to discuss certain things with other people and really opening up to that knowledge, to the fact that what we think of as crazy and weird and out there should be mundane. It should be the norm. Telepathy should be the norm. Having all these psychic abilities should be the norm, but we have been conditioned, and there's been some sort of block there to where we are blind and can't see that that's the case.
And
And
I
even mhm.
and I hardly ever use the word gifts when I talk about these things. I use the word ability, and the vibration of it makes me think back when, before, most people couldn't read, so they didn't understand scripture, and if they kept them in the dark, then they could have control. And I don't think people do it intentionally, but I do think people will say the word gift because maybe that's the word they heard or were taught. But for me, it's ability. And the way I always tell people is like, it's just like singing. Every one of us can sing. We can. Now, some of us come into this lifetime really being able to sing very well from a young age. Some of us come in and we can learn and develop and hone the skill and become a really good singer. Some of us come in and we're just not going to really be able to sing very well. We can still sing and we can still do it. People may not want to hear it, but we can sing. And an interesting thing happened to me and I think I might have said this last time we met, but I'll never forget, I threw myself into the church, and I was encouraged to hear the voice and commune with the Holy Spirit. And then when I started studying all things psychic and metaphysical, I'm driving home one day from a class, and the voice was like, "Did you expect my voice to change?" And I almost drove off the road because it was just such an aha moment. So in the church, every time I took the test of what's your abilities, discernment was my number one, which is basically psychic abilities. So it was really interesting to realize that voice that I pulled up a chair at my bed in college and talked to the Holy Spirit was the same voice that I'm throwing tarot cards and they're saying, "Oh yeah, pay attention to that card."
Interesting. It's so weird. I on the flip side of this, when I think back about it also, I a part of me is like, okay, well, yeah, we have these abilities. But then another part of me thinks, well, if I had tuned into this ability a long time ago, there would be something about me right now that I might be lacking. Like, I actually love the fact that I can explore science and combine it with tarot, and that I can have this physical, biological connection with spirituality on a deeper level, with connecting the physical to the spiritual, because I am looking at it in a quantum level, or looking at it on the atomic level, and looking at the energy of atoms. And I like that. And I don't know that I would have explored that as much if I was able to leap that. I don't know how to explain it, but my existence in my life up to the point before I started realizing that I'm connecting with something else, I value it, but at the same time, I don't value it. It's kind of like looking back and saying, well, it could have been so much easier. But then again, looking back and saying, well, I wouldn't be who I am. So it's weird. It's a weird way to think of it. Like, which one was I supposed to do, But I don't know.
Maybe you're supposed to do all of it. It's just
Yeah.
part of the path, it's part of the growth and the things that you're learning, and we evolve, and we're not the same person we were when we were 5 at all,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
should be. So yeah,
That's interesting that you say that. Sorry to cut you off, but I had this thought come to me when you said maybe you're supposed to do all of it. And as soon as you said that, the word multidimensional came into my mind. Like, you are doing all of it. You just are doing it on different levels. And I was like, wow, that's actually fascinating, because I've often heard that, for every possibility that you can think of, it exists, on a multidimensional level. But it was just a thought that came to me. But yeah, could very well be a totally different version of me that.
yeah. And also, there's a teacher I had a long time ago. She's an intuitive, and she writes books and stuff too, but she always says intuition is an idiot's gift. Going back to making it mundane, she's like, everybody has intuition. Everybody. We just don't acknowledge it. Like, you have it in an intuitive ability, when to cross the street, when it's safe to cross the street, like, so that you don't get hit by something, like making like snap decisions in the moment, and like following your gut, or following the thing in your mind that's telling you, oh, do this, do that, is all intuition. It's just, it's not sort of generally in the mainstream, it's not acknowledged as something that we all do on a regular basis anyway. So if you come from that point of view too, it helps ground it and be like, well, it's just me exploring like what's already there and whatever we all have. It's just our culture and our societies like to focus on other things, that are not this. So instead, we value, being productive, work, distractions, entertainment, like all these things that are not intuitive necessarily. But if we lived in a culture that, like valued introspection, intuition, quiet, all these things, we would have a completely different set of values in our society. So putting it sort of into context of like, okay, there's this whole spectrum of stuff that we get you know, but we're only focused on like, you know, a handful of them, but there's all this other stuff that we can actually focus on. All we have to do is like shift our mind and be like, okay, I'm going to shift out of, I don't know, my paradigm, my mental paradigm, and into this one over here, which is literally just deciding to meditate on a regular basis, or deciding to take a class on, you know, how to hone a certain gift, like, you know, an intuition, like a clair or whatever, you know, or just literally focusing on, okay, what does it mean? How do I get guidance? You know, is it from, let me, I don't know, expand my mind, like read a book about like, I don't know, reptilians, or, you know, the nearest star systems, or, you know, witchcraft, or whatever it is that you're drawn to, but it just expands all these other options for you that our mainstream doesn't value, period.
Right.
So it's just
Right.
like our mainstream focuses on a certain set of things to get shit done so that people can make money, and, you know, corporations can like rule the world. Sorry.
Right. You know what? No.
You know, it's so funny that you say that, Aurora, because I was like just thinking that just before you said, I was thinking like, yeah, there's like kind of a reason why we're not encouraged to tap into our intuition and the other parts of ourselves. And I was thinking about this last night, and I got this image of a house, and I think we all live in like a giant mansion, but we're only living in like the laundry room, and that's the only light that we have turned on, and we have all these other rooms. And as you start to become more aware of yourself and who you are, and as you start to like open up your intuitive channel in your consciousness, it's like flicking on the switch, the light switch on some of the other rooms, and it's like this kind of expansive thing. And I think that our current society and culture has a lot to gain from keeping us in that little laundry room with just one light on. Because once we start to flick on all the other lights in our house, you know, and become aware of things, our priorities shift, and the things that are compelling to us and the things that we want to do when we're just living in one little section of our house with one light on is very different from, you know, who we become and what we're interested in when all our lights are on.
Exactly. You know, I was listening to that, like as she was talking, I just got this like flood of information that I've been like burning to like say, because you mentioned culture and, you know, how it gets in the way. And then what came to me when you said that was ego. And I was like, huh. And I started thinking, well, yeah, because if we're in the physical, we have to in some way be grounded and rooted in the physical. And it's ego, and our fears are rooted in ego as well. And so those fears of, okay, I got to make money, I got to do this, I got to do that, that sort of mentality locks us in. And it's a strong pull because it has to keep us here. And so it has to keep us grounded so we can focus and maintain our existence here in the physical and have this experience. Otherwise, we're just going to snap and, switch that off, like Kate's saying, and we'll see the bigger picture. And so all this stuff drops. And so there's this battle between ego and spiritual, so that we have to really, sort of balance that. Because, I mean, we have to live our lives here. So the ego has a role, but at the same time, it's our job to wake up and see through that role and sort of take control away from that, because the ego wants to control and keep us. And so you're right, it is that battle of control. You know, you have corporations that are in the mix as well. So there's two things really. There's our ego, but also, and I got to say this, and I know it's weird, but there's also interference from on a galactic level. You have service to self beings that have rooted themselves in our system. And I think a lot of people don't want to recognize that, but I think it's true. I think that there are certain things that are pushed to us to try to push fear into us through the media to root us back into the ego and keep us grounded in that, so that we can't break free from that. It's set up like, to kind of feed the ego, to really, feed themselves for one, and to also feed our interface with the physical world. It's a tricky thing, but yeah, I totally can see that as well. And I think more people are waking up to that.
And the image, and it's so funny. I love how, I'm gonna say it, Will. Every time you say, a thought just came to me. I'm like, one day you're gonna say, all right, my guides just told me.
Yeah.
One day you're gonna say it.
That's
One
the
day
problem. Yeah.
I know. But you know what? And you know what? When I'm sitting down and I will literally have like a very conservative Christian person sitting in front of me, and I have no problem doing a tarot card reading or a psychic mediumship reading in their language so that they can at least get that information and then not be too overwhelming. Because if I start talking about aliens versus, I feel an angel telling me something, it's an off-planet being. It doesn't matter where the messages come from. Here's the message. But the image I got when you were talking was, and this is what I do when I get a little overwhelmed, because the ego, the humanness, think of two children playing a game of Monopoly. Monopoly is like the third dimension. So there's little people down on that board, and that's the third dimension, and that's ego, and that's the big corporation. But then you pull it up a level, and there's two people rolling dice that realize it's just a game. But how many times do people get livid when they lose the game? That's when they're in their ego. And then you got mom and dad who are in the kitchen looking back at the two kids playing and going, oh, aren't they cute? And then if you want to take this imagery up even a further level, someone who built the game and designed it out of cardboard and metal and paper and stamped it, it's like they're all just going, here, go play the game, of life, and it's like another image. And you'll appreciate this, I think, as a science person. I will pull it up every once in a while, and I'll Google Earth, I'll zoom in on, Orlando, Florida, and then I pull out, and then I pull out, and I pull out. I pull out so far that I can't even make out the solar system. And I'm like, now everything's okay again. It's like, this is where I am.
That's really fascinating. I was reading a book on, I'll bring the Arcturians back in here because I've been reading a lot of books on them. But I read in this one chapter where someone was channeling one of these beings, and they said, and the being said, I feel bad for you because I don't feel, I'm not experiencing this, but we understand your struggle. And it was as if that being was speaking from that pulled out perspective and saying, I really can't relate, but I'm trying and I understand, but I have not had that experience. And I feel bad and I'm doing the best I can, basically. And it's so hard because, you mentioned things like the guy was talking about like time, and then he's like, you mentioned things like time. And I'm like, I don't know. We don't experience that. I don't really know how to communicate this to you. And I found that section in that book fascinating. I'll put the books back in the description. I had them in the last video as well. But yeah, just interesting that you mentioned that, because yeah, it's true. It is a game in a sense, but we're in it and we can't all the time. I mean, most people, I'd say the majority of people don't recognize that. It's like the Fool card. Who, the fool is someone that recognizes the game, and they're like, it's like Neo in the Matrix. I'm just gonna jump off a building or walk off a cliff because it's a game. And, you think of the fool as like, some people think of the fool as, lacking knowledge, but the fool actually has the ultimate knowledge of the game. And so they're laughing, they're the fool, like, oh, this is a joke. But when we get to that point, I think it really does make a huge difference in how we feel. Like you said, when you pull back and you saw it and you felt light, you're like, okay, yeah, this is nothing, right? And I think it really feels good if we could actually realize that. And I don't know, yeah.
I really like the analogy that you gave, Mitchel. I think that it's very, like, it feels very light, and I like that because, like, last night I was thinking about this sort of topic, and what I'm seeing, what I'm sensing is that people are starting to become more, I guess, multidimensional. They're opening up, they're becoming more aware. And I don't really, like, if I go online, I don't get that sense when I see people online. If you go on social media, like, I don't really feel that. But when I go out in the world and see people face to face, it's easier for me to see how that shift is happening. And it's almost like I'm noticing all the, like, government, big tech, media, all of these things are becoming more, they're trying to encroach more on our lives, and they're becoming more domineering, almost like a bullying kind of quality. And it reminds me of like if you're in like an abusive relationship with someone and that person is also super insecure, and you're starting to have more confidence and you're starting to really come into yourself and be more independent, and that jealous boyfriend or whatever is like seeing that and getting more insecure and trying to be more controlling and more domineering to try to keep you, and they can tell they're losing. Like that's kind of what it feels like with our relationship to a lot of these, you know, powers that were that I think are going to be kind of that are crumbling. And that's kind of how I see it. I like your analogy more, Mitchell, of like the game kind of being played. I feel like that to me makes me feel more light when I think of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I do feel that same sense of some sort of, you know, authority or power slipping from the grasp of a lot of, you know, the control systems. And I think that, you know, as time goes by, it's just a matter of the effort is futile, I think, from their standpoint. And that gives me a lot of hope, because I remember talking about it with you, Kate, before, and I was like, yeah, I feel very hopeful. And I think that people are recognizing a lot of things. And I also think that a lot of things that they do, I laugh at, because even though they're trying to instill fear, they're trying to set regulations and all these types of things, it's pointless, because none of that stuff, it's doing something that is a last ditch effort that you know is not going to work. So for example, let's say I'll use the example of a contract, right? So let's say someone tries to get you to sign some sort of contract, and you know, they think it's a binding contract. They think that what they're doing is something that's going to lock you into something. And so they give you this piece of paper and they make you sign this contract, and you go ahead and sign the contract. But when you look at you look at the contract, and the contract it's got gaps in it. It's got erased stuff. It's got, you know, pages that are blank. And you're like, you look at it and you're like, I'll go ahead and sign this contract, because this contract isn't binding, because a binding contract has to have all the information in there. You can't give me a blank piece of paper and ask me to sign this contract. And so I use that analogy because they think that what they're doing is locking people into a certain, you know, set of fear or a certain mindset, but they don't see the fault in their tactic. You could sign that contract all day. It's not binding unless you actually know what's in the contract. If someone does something maliciously and suspiciously, that is not a legal binding contract. You cannot do that. And so on a spiritual level, on a universal level, it's a totally flawed tactic and process. And I see that desperation in the actions of entities. And so I find it sort of funny, but at the same time, it's like, you know, let's just hurry up and move this process along. But I do see that happening as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like truth is the only thing that would be binding or legal. It's like anything else is like, yeah, that's it. It has no weight. It's not solid ground.
Right, but because, you know, there is this. I've heard this thing of like when there's manipulation taking place on a spiritual level or on some level of control, there has to be a disclosure, or there has to be or it's something like, you know, that disclosed in plain sight. But that does not fall, that falls flat in a sense, because things need to be clear. If someone doesn't understand what they're getting into, and you're still trying to do something and skirt around the facts and do it in a sneaky way, it's still not binding. It's still not progression. It's still the mentality of, I guess, you know, any entity or anything out there that wants to hold us down or keep us back. It's flawed in a sense, because it does not understand that its actions they're not binding on a spiritual level. And I know it's hard for me to communicate that, but it's just what I feel. And from what I've seen, just, you know, looking at society and looking at a lot of things that are taking place, I just see I see the desperation in it. from a lot of perspective. I see that. It sucks, you know, because it does still, their ramping up of their futile efforts does still cause a lot of turmoil and, you know, tension. But at the same time, a lot of the things that they're doing is exposed in such a silly way as the earth, you know, the earth shifts as well and just kind of spews out all of this, you know, they're all of the flawed thought patterns and, you know, I guess.
You know, I think is, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think the intensity of life keeps getting ramped up, you know, from, you know, Kate, what you said, like corporations kind of being the bullies and like encroaching, because what that does is it creates like more tension, right, on all of us, which means we then have to go elsewhere. And what we're going to do is, one, either fight back or hit rock bottom. And when you hit rock bottom, you really question what is true. You really like look, and you can the only thing you can do is hold on to what matters to you. Like it gets very clear, like, okay, this is what matters, this is what doesn't. And when you have enough people coming together, having that experience and finding their truth and finding the depths of like what's actually real for them, then all of these other things that you're talking about, Will, the fake contracts kind of fall away. There's no power in it anymore,
right.
You know? And plus with the earth, you know, I'm assuming, I don't know, I shouldn't assume it, but like, if you believe in climate change, we can all, okay, whether you agree with it or not, we can all understand that even our earth herself is like ramping up the experiences that we are having on this planet, right? From the tornadoes and hurricanes to flooding to fires, all of it's being ramped up. So this is another not test, but another way of like us really having to go in and get very clear about what is important to us and like how we're going to handle it, you know, from consumerism to, you know, to what, I'm having a brain fart here. Let's just say to consumerism anyway, the way that we consume and literally spit out poop. Like all we have left is this trail of like shit in terms of plastic and, you know, what we leave behind for the planet and for the other beings that are not humans, but also not humans that have to live in it. You know, all of this stuff is creating this imprint that we have to deal with, which is ramping up everything, which is gonna implode, and land us right back on the truth in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I was gonna ask, like, I wonder what role polarity plays in this, because it feels like there's so much polarity and it's getting ramped up to this like unbearable level, and intensity is just going up. And Aurora, when you said, you know, it's like we kind of have to hit rock bottom before we recalibrate and ask ourselves, you know, what is really important to us. And I think that does feel like we're kind of heading towards that point where we do kind of hit rock bottom and we have some aha moments. And I think that the relationship that we have with ourselves is reflected in the relationship that we have with the planet and the relationship that we have with others. Like how we relate to nature and the planet and how we treat it, I think is a clear like mirror of how we treat ourselves and the relationship that we have to ourselves. And so I think that, I mean, that's one avenue of like healing our relationship with the planet and how we treat it is changing how we relate to ourselves as well.
Yeah. I was reading a book, and they were talking about you know, the little gray aliens, the ones that, you know, they say come and they abduct us and do the experiments and stuff like that. And the person that was doing the challenge, they were like, well, what's the deal with them? Why are they doing this? And they said the grays look at us and they see every other animal and organism on this planet, and they look at us as the lowest, because even the lowest level of animal still does not, you know, crap where it lives. And they see us as the one animal that doesn't respect its own environment. Like every other animal, it has like certain abilities to at least be in tune with the planet, but they look at us and they're like, these ones we don't respect. And I was like, wow, that really struck me as like hard, because I was like, we are doing some damage, and they just didn't have respect. And then they shifted and they said, well, why do you have respect? So that whoever they were channeling, they were like, well, why do you have respect? And they were like, well, we see you as kids. We see you as, like Mitchel was saying, we're like looking down at you over the fence. And we understand, the whole process of growth, but they don't. They just see you as like a problem. And I was like, wow, that is really bizarre. And it's like, yeah, we do need to hit rock bottom and really start thinking about the things that we're doing to our planet, and just change our mindset, because the consumerism and the things that we are really rooted in and locked in, and a lot of us find tough and struggle to get out, because we just see it. It's thrown at us too in the media, and just every single day, the way our lives are designed on a cultural basis, like Aurora was saying, our culture, the way it's set up, it's tough to dig out. I think it's going to take a while for people to hit rock bottom and really see that. And the earth is really pushing hard back. Mm-hmm.
She is. Yeah. And part of, I think, once you start realizing why systems have been put into place and start questioning them and understanding like media and like advertising, marketing, all that stuff, which is, sort of a given. Like if you own a business, like you have to market it in order to get consumers or customers. But if your business is, I don't know, on sex appeal, then you're going to have to make your consumers feel like they're not sexy enough in order to buy your product, right? Or, if we turn it to, I guess like education. Sorry, Will.
No, that's okay.
But, our systems are, at least as far as I know, our systems are based off of, a very like structured, in terms of education, a very structured system of going into war. So they're basically, our education system has wanted to produce robots so that we can, function in sort of a machine sort of way so that we can, hold our territory. Like our people are being brought up so that not as individuals, but as these units, so that they can take care of a certain problem, and instead of being an individual, if you're fed through the public school system in the US, and I'm assuming elsewhere too, even if there's differences, there's some kind of systemic reason for educating people the way that we're mostly educated in the public, and looking at that and being like, wow, the US system is based on like a German way of teaching, so that I don't know, the Nazis or something could like take over the world, like that's like coming to that realization and being like, holy crap, no wonder school never worked for me. Like I as a human being was not taken into consideration. I was like a cog that they were sticking in a wheel, and finally being able to see that and be like, oh, okay, I'm questioning this because it doesn't work. Like, and that's cool. That's actually really great. So what does work,
Mm-hmm.
and Will, you're in this really great position where you can question those things and actually like teach in a way that your kids want and like need,
Well,
and
even for the teachers, it's a struggle, because there are limitations. Like I can't discuss, I stick strictly to the standards and things that they give, and I can't deviate. I can't really change. Like I agree that there are many things that can be done differently as far as educating. But I also know that it's a mixed bag of things. I mean, you have like, I might have like 170 something kids. If I deviate in a sense, I could trigger something within that system of that one kid with their parents or something like that. And so it can cause an issue. So I'm very careful. I actually feel very robotic as a teacher. I have to go in and plug in certain bits of things. I can't put my personality or my perspective on display at all, because that stuff could, it could cause me my employment. So I have to be super careful. And so, yeah, that system is designed that you have to be a certain way. I've seen many teachers get in trouble for going outside of certain, realms of explanations, of certain realms of thought. And so it's tricky. It's very tricky. And I see that play out. I do feel like, there is opportunity in certain places to sort of drop, bits of information in, but you have to be really careful about, what you say. There are certain things, I think there are certain biases, and it can be hypocritical when it comes to certain things. I know we have like a religious club, but we could never have, I wouldn't even try to start a tarot club or any sort of intuition club or clamor. That would get investigated. I mean, it would be picked apart. If I created the Christian club, and no one's going to really say anything. We have one of those after school. No one even bothers to go and look. But there are limitations, clear limitations to where these systems will allow you to go, and they will plug you into that box.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite teachers were the ones that really didn't give a fuck and just did their own thing. And they were always the older teachers that were like near retirement. So like they did not care. And I remember having an English literature teacher, and I think it was her like last year or second to last year that she was teaching. And she was such an amazing teacher. And she would teach us about like the poets and stuff. And she would tell us all these like gossipy stories about their lives, because a lot of them had really dysfunctional lives. I forget which poet it was, had a like incestuous relationship with his sister, and they tried to get married and like stuff like that. She would tell us like all these like gossipy stories, and it just made the course so fun. And I actually like remembered, actually like learned, whereas like the teachers and the younger teachers were usually, like you said, well, kind of more robotic and like did things to a T and by the book. And I imagine it's even worse now, because I feel like things have gotten even more limiting in, I was in high school like over 20 years ago. So it's a while ago. I imagine it's even more intense now, but my favorite teachers were the ones that like just didn't care and just kind of did their own thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of the older teachers that are in my district, they do some things where I'm like, no way I could say that or do that. I wouldn't even say the word incest in my class. I just you have to be very, very careful. I mean, but I'm sort of in the middle there. I've been teaching for about 15 years, but yeah, the teachers that are like 30 years, like right on the edge of retirement, they have some of them have some very fascinating, fun classes. Some of them are just kind of retired on duty, but some of them do have some really, really cool classes. But yeah, absolutely. So it's we've gone for about an hour or so now. So yeah, man, I feel like that hour went too fast, guys. It's just,
it went so fast. And I missed like the first 15 minutes of it. I couldn't get into the Zoom thing. So I don't know if I missed anything like super exciting in the first 10, 15 minutes.
We were just kind of ramping things up, but no, not really. But yeah, it just even I don't know, it just feels like it's been 20 minutes, but yeah. All right. So I'll email you guys again and see where we want to take this, and keep communicating with you. And definitely, because I think, like we were talking about just a moment ago, making it more mundane, making these conversations more open. Like, I don't feel like what I'm saying is weird when I talk to you all. I feel like I can express it, and I feel like other people might be sitting there thinking, well, what I was thinking, he just said something, or Mitchel just said something, or Aurora said something, or Kate said something, and I've been thinking that, and I never wanted to say it because I never heard anybody talk about anything like that. So I think this is important and valuable. And so thank you guys so much. And I have you all, I'm glad, I think we have a really good group. Like, I think that I mean, if other people want to be a part of it, I'll reach out as well. But I think that we have such unique perspectives, and it really works well. And I feel like it just kind of clicks, because I think with my perspective, then we have Mitchel's perspective. I think that that's a great balance there, because I think Mitchel has such a more open and
doesn't give a fuck anymore.
Exactly. He's like that teacher about to retire, and I'm like, so yeah. So I need that, and I feel like we all bring like something really, really, really cool. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you putting it all together.
Yeah,
yeah, it's fun. All right, so I'll email you guys more often, because I miss talking to you guys during the break. I know Kate and I will change emails here and there, but Aurora and Mitchel, I'll be communicating with you too.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, I love chatting with you guys. You guys are like so much fun to chit chat with. So thanks everyone for being here.
Yeah, one of our discussions next time needs to be soul families or something like that. So we have to see.
Yeah.
That's all that. All right. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you all for watching Atypical Tarot, or whatever, if you guys are going to post it on your other channels. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.